Hi and welcome. Today I have a art card for my art ring journal. It's 3.5 by 5 and I end up putting a hole in it for my ring. I start with a 3.5 by 5 piece of Bristol smooth paper, and I'm going to be using this stencil from Tim Holtz. I chose this one because it has a lot of open area in it. I wanted small area for my ink. So I'm starting with cracked pistachio, and I'm putting it directly onto the stencil. I chose a couple colors that both colors are in the small ink pad version that I have. So I don't use them that often. So and because it's easier to apply with those. You can do it with the large ones, but it's easier with those. So I wet it, I sprayed it with water, and then I laid it down, ink side down, on the paper. And I did that a couple times, just getting it right on top of each other. I didn't go through the whole thing each time. And then I'm also using broken china, going down, trying to keep the ink a little wet. And in some places you can see both colors. In other places you mainly see this last broken china color. I'm going to be doing something I haven't done, and that's why I chose this stencil, and you'll see why. So I'm just adding a little more blue. See, and it's easy to line up. That's another reason I chose this one. Okay, so I have that and it's wet. And so it's wet, and I'm going to add some embossing glaze. Now the reason I chose that stencil was because I don't want to have to cover a big area with embossing glaze. So I used my blue, and then I'm also using my cracked pistachio glaze. So there's not going to be as much cracked pistachio because blue went down first and took up most of the wet area. And here's what I love. I love that the stencil was imperfect to start, so that there were some areas where there was a lot of ink. There were some areas where it was spotty, which I love the most. And I don't know, to me, and I've never seen this before. Maybe someone does it, I don't know. But I just thought I wanted something different. And so I thought I'm just going to put the stencil down and put the embossing glaze right on top of the stencil. It took a little bit to, because some places it had really thick, it was real wet, so it collected more embossing glaze. And so I had to really make sure that was melted, or else it would have just wiped off. So that's one thing you need to watch for. For the background, I'm adding some salvaged patina. I think a neutral color would have worked just as well, like a antique linen or old paper. I think that would have worked well too. And I'm just doing a splatter with my fan brush because I want little, and with water. and just to kind of make a few random variations of the salvaged patina. I'm taking this stamp from Faded Type and Pebble Beach Archival Ink, and I'm doing quite a few stamps of it. I kind of like when you stamp repetitiously. Is that a word? And the same stamp versus let's do a bunch of different stamps. That has its place for sure, and I do that. But this one I liked, and I just kind of wanted to do the same stamp again and again, leaving a lot of blank areas, but filling in and adding some interest in other areas. I want to make sure that I see it quite a bit, even though I'm going to be adding collage. I want to be able to see the stamp. I'm going to take some vintage photo around the edges. And I come in just a little bit. I'm not just touching the edge, but in a little bit. The piece I'm gonna have as my main focal point has some green in it, and so I wanted to just make sure I had some green in the piece before I added that down. So I splattered some peeled paint, and the peeled paint will help bridge that gap between the blues, the cracked pistachio, and my focal point. This piece was part of a download, and I had already cut the bird out, and I really liked the branch. I don't think it was sitting on this branch, but it was somehow in the same picture. And I'm like, oh, I can't let that branch go to waste. So I had cut it out, not knowing what I was going to do with it. And as I was doing this piece, I was kind of auditioning some pieces to go on. I had some birds, I had some flowers, and I pulled that out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is going to be perfect. The circle is a punch from a digital receipt, and so I just took part of it with my large hole punch and punched it out. There's a lot of blankness on it though, so I decided to do a little bit of stamping just on some of the areas that kind of don't have anything. So I'm using Pebble Beach again because I don't really want it to jump out. I want it to be a little subtle. So I've got, actually I think I used, the first one was Eccentric and the second one was Field Notes. And those are our stamp collections from Tim Holtz, Stampers Anonymous. And the rest are all digital downloads except for when I add the sentiment. That is Tim Holtz clippings. do have to say, I really love the randomness of the background. I think I do not end up using, no, I do not use that 6. I think it looked too much like the other one. I've had this sitting in my bin of flowers for a while, so a couple of the leaves got bent, but right at the stem of it, but it's intact, so I was glad about that. And I'm okay with some parts of it extending off the card. I'm all right with that. And so I just lay it down to how I like it. And I think that's the only excess one I trim off, is just that little stem. And I did find a different little number to add to the piece. And it's got a little hole where you could put some sort of rivet or something, but I just punch it and leave it at that. And like I said, from Tim Holtz clipping book, I take a sentiment. It says, "The last flowers of summer." We're definitely not there in Florida right now. It's in the heat of summer. And even though it's a sticker book, I do glue it down. And the last thing I do is to add the hole and the eyelet for my ring. This is part of for my ring journal. After that, I'm done, and you'll see some final pictures coming up. If you haven't subscribed, I invite you to do that. If you like this piece, give me a thumbs up. And either way, I hope you have an awesome day, and see you next time.